Welcome to the Friday vlog.
Welcome to the Friday vlog.
And today we wanted to talk about how following a feeling of emotional urgency can take you off track in relationship.
Yes, it's kind of hard to say. Emotional urgency.
Is it a tongue twister?
For me, it evidently is. But it can be kind of problematic, I have noticed for myself, for sure.
Yeah.
But pray continue.
So we were working with a couple this weekend, and you came up with a really great sailing analogy to illustrate this point.
Yeah, I do like a nautical analogy or a metaphor, and it was quite interesting because these are nautical people, and it didn't really occur to me to use a nautical analogy or a metaphor throughout the entire weekend until the last chance saloon.
At least you said saloon and not salon.
I know, you have corrected my ways on that front. But the analogy is that in the wake of you talking about emotional urgency, I had this recollection of being, I don't know, I was like 12 or 13. I was a member of a sailing club. And in this sailing club, because we were sailing in the North Sea, and the North Sea is known for its inclement weather and dense fog, one might find oneself on deck in the middle of the night because it was one's watch to be at the wheel. Either you were paired up, so there were two boys on deck in the middle of the night doing a 2-hour watch. One would be at the wheel, and the other one would be blasting out a foghorn.
What is a foghorn? What is it?
Well,
is it something you squeeze or
something you squeeze?
Making a horn.
It's like a squeaky toy or something.
What is a foghorn?
Oh, you mean like a bicycle horn?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was funny. No, it's something that you blow. It's like a great big sort of
like an instrument.
It's almost like a mini trumpet.
Okay.
But not a trumpet. It has a sort of, I can't describe it.
It's
a horn.
Okay.
That you blow. It's kind of about this long.
I've never seen a foghorn. I've only heard foghorns in lighthouses, and it's not some.
It's a great big ship coming to. Oh yeah, we couldn't avoid that collision. Well, it might be because we gave it a little toot. Well, anyway, so there's a boy on deck. He's blowing the foghorn. I don't know at what intervals, maybe a couple of minutes or so, he blows the foghorn. The other boy is at the helm. I am at the helm, and just to give it some sort of some sort of texture context, there is a starboard and port bow. There's a starboard and port light on the bow.
Okay.
And the port light is red and the starboard light is green. Mm-hmm. And because of the fog and because I'm half asleep, my mind started to play tricks on me. And at some point, the red port light and the green starboard light turned into these little dancing goblins.
Oh my goodness.
At least that's the excuse I'm giving myself. Maybe that was the excuse I made up, I don't know, at the time, when for whatever reason, in this distraction, I forgot to look at the compass, which really, for doing this for 2 hours, you've got this great big wooden wheel, you're staring at this big compass that's sort of suspended in water in this sort of globe thing.
Sounds like torture for a young boy.
It was torture for me. Imagine my focus on having to be focused on that for 2 hours. So anyway, I got distracted by the dancing goblins and forgot to look at the compass. And in those, however long it took for me to sort of look away from the compass, by the time I looked back, it had gone off quite a few degrees. And in my naivety and my emotional urgency, because I suddenly, oh my God, we're way off course. And I don't know how long it had been for me watching those dancing goblins. It might have been some time. We had gone significantly on course. So in the emotional emergency that then took a hold of me, I then started did quite a significant turn of the wheel and nothing happened. It was literally nothing was registered on the compass. So I kept turning and I kept turning and I kept turning. And for whatever length of time it takes to transmit that that information from the wheel to the rudder, I had literally probably turned the rudder really at a very a very steep angle, and the boat just suddenly, all of a sudden, just literally, and the nautical term is to go about.
About?
Yes, it went about. It basically turned around.
Okay.
At which point, I think every boy in the bunks down below, what is it called? There's a term for it. I'm forgetting all these terms.
I don't know the term.
Below decks, we'll
Okay.
say. Every boy below deck fell out of his bunk, and then the captain comes rushing up, or the skipper, as I might say, comes rushing up. I was like, what the devil's going on? And by this time, I tried to make an even more urgent adjustment.
The other way?
The other way, still in this very urgent way, which only needed a little gentle movement here and there, and the boat swiftly turned in the other direction a few beats later. I think he practically fell overboard at this point. But my point was, the reason for this analogy is that sometimes in life it pays dividends to sort of take a breath. Don't immediately respond to whatever situation that we find ourselves in. That emotional urgency is sort of starting to sort of build up in our system, flight or flight or whatever that looks like. It's very easy to sort of get on board whatever our analytical minds decides is the best course of action in that moment. When, to be honest, my greatest ally in those moments is my intuition. Really, it's like having a settled mind. And to be honest, if I think about it, there are people that I know, which probably I should have really learned from, but I didn't, who, when I think about it, when faced with crisis, they will often shut their eyes and take a deep breath. And it's kind of, for me, that's them getting present. Mm-hmm. I never really learnt that in any kind of meaningful way. So I was definitely the kind of person that would really try to rush in and fix something based on the urgency of the situation and my mind working at that level. So I think it's really important to sort of like realize that, sometimes it doesn't need immediate urgent action based on the state of mind I'm in. If I'm in that state of mind, that can be an indicator to take a breath, to slow down, and realize that a settled mind is my friend in that situation.
Yeah. And in relationship, often the equivalent of turning the wheel,
going about,
can often really damage goodwill and rapport in the relationship. Yeah. It often doesn't go well, let's say. At least that's been my experience. And so what we're pointing to is how that feeling of emotional urgency is an indicator to take care of yourself, and that it's not the indicator to immediately rush in, because our thinking isn't as clear as it could be when we're in that state. Now, if there's a real crisis, it's a different experience because we just act. There's no thinking about whether we should act or not. We just do what's needed. And there's usually a sense of real clarity when there's a real crisis going on. But it's when our emotions are really stirred up that we feel that sense of urgency, and then we start to get caught up in that and then act in ways that can be really counterproductive for ourselves and for whoever might be around us.
Yeah, and then the gentleman that I was working with this weekend, we were working with a couple, he had shared a similar experience where there would be occasion where in the region of the world where he goes sailing, sometimes he could find himself on deck in the middle of the night and there is a cloud cover, a cloud canopy, so he can't see the stars. And would have to focus on the compass, and he remembers, having a moment where he kind of got a little bit disoriented. And he says in those moments of disorientation, he tends to shut his eyes and feel the elements, which for me was just a sort of great way of just sort of suggesting how we can find a way to become present to what's happening in our environment, but more importantly, what's happening in our psychological environment. I feel like for me now, I'm getting much better at sort of not necessarily listening to the chatter of the mind and its instructions and in terms of what it wants me to do in a very urgent way. I'm getting more cognizant of the feeling state. So I feel the feelings, and that in actual fact helps me settle. That's just something that I use that's helpful for me. It might be different for everybody else, but that's a way that I find myself getting present. And it could be in any situation. It could be, that flight or flight could come up when you do something annoying. And now, rather than, listen to the chatter and act on that, I'm now kind of like feeling those feelings. And actually, in feeling those feelings, I generally remember, well, flight or flight is starting to come up in my system. It will go back down. And when it's down, that will be the time to make a decision. Mm-hmm. And that would be good for me to sort of think of those times where I've witnessed people take a breath, take a beat, But I certainly didn't. It took a long time to learn that.
What was it your mother who would say, "Stay icy calm"?
Apparently, it was my grandfather who would say that. That my mother would often repeat to me, "Keep icy calm," as your grandfather always used to say, "Keep icy calm."
And was he a nautical person?
No, he wasn't. He was a butcher.
Oh, he was the butcher.
Yeah,
I'm getting the grandparents mixed up.
The other grandparent was nautical. Yes.
Got it. Well, we hope this is a helpful reminder to you to recognize that feeling of urgency is an opportunity for self-care, as Angus is saying, to take that nice long deep breath and then see how you feel when your nervous system settles down and when your thinking settles, and then see what makes sense based on whatever's happening.
And it doesn't have to be a deep breath, it's just really an awareness, isn't it, in the moment? Whatever floats your boat on that front.
Exactly. That's what Angus does. We aren't necessarily saying do that, we're saying listen to what makes sense for you in terms of what your self-care looks like.
Sounds good.
Have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend.